Imagine having the audacity to sell the world's most famous landmark. Not once, but twice. Unbelievable, right? Yet, for one man, the impossible was merely an invitation for opportunity. Meet Victor Lustig, a master con artist who accomplished the unthinkable by selling the Eiffel Tower to unsuspecting buyers not once, but twice. This outrageous scheme was just one of many cunning cons that marked his notorious career. In this video, we'll journey into the extraordinary life of Victor Lustig, from his humble beginnings in Austria-Hungary to his rise as one of history's most infamous con men. Lustig's story is a thrilling saga of deception and audacity. We'll unravel the elaborate plots he conceived, like the magic money box and the infamous Eiffel Tower scam, and uncover how his charm and wit allowed him to deceive countless victims. But Victor's life of crime came at a cost. We'll trace his footsteps as he navigates the law, escapes from prison, and ultimately confronts the repercussions of his actions. So sit back, relax, and prepare to be astounded by the incredible tale of Victor Lustig, man who sold the Eiffel Tower twice. Before we dive in, I'd like to give a shout out to Dhruv Somaya. You're doing great things for this channel, and we enjoy having you here. Now let's get to the video. Chapter 1, Humble Beginnings. The beginning of Victor Lustig's story is unbelievable. Born in 1890 in the Austro-Hungarian town of Hostin, which is now part of the Czech Republic, Lustig's true origins remain uncertain because he used over 40 different aliases throughout his life. He frequently lied about his identity and origins, constantly changing his appearance and persona. Victor described his parents as the poorest peasant people, who could barely afford to feed and clothe their children. When his parents split up when he was 8, Victor was sent to live with relatives. By the age of 12, fed up with the situation, he dropped out of school and ran away. Living on the streets and needing money to survive, he learned the art of pickpocketing and begging. However, one particular incident would shape his life forever. One spring evening, 13-year-old Victor was desperately digging through trash cans outside a fancy hotel, searching for scraps of food. He noticed a couple preparing for a romantic dinner on the hotel's balcony. He watched as waiters brought out plate after plate of food, a feast fit for a king. To his surprise, the couple didn't eat a single bite and headed straight to the bedroom. Seeing all that delicious food going to waste, Victor decided that if some people could live so lavishly while he had to scavenge for scraps, he would never feel guilty about conning those more fortunate than him. From that day on, Victor upped his game from merely pickpocketing to more advanced tactics like petty theft and burglary. By the age of 18, he was a master of sleight of hand, the skill of fast hand movements to deceive others. Think of the game. 3-card Monty. The performer shuffles the cards and asks the audience to guess which card is the money card. Despite appearing simple, the game is rigged so that the participant almost always guesses incorrectly. The trick relies on sleight of hand and misdirection. It didn't take long for the police to catch up with Victor, and he served various stints in prisons in Budapest, Prague, Zurich, and Vienna. Spending time in jail didn't deter Victor. In fact, it gave him more time to sharpen his skills. With the heat on him, Victor decided to board a ship and head to America, where he heard of all the opportunities awaiting him. Even on the ship, Lustig couldn't stay out of trouble. He would get into a scuffle with a sailor who thought Victor was getting too friendly with his date and would put a cut along Victor's cheek. It wasn't all bad news for Victor, for he saw the golden opportunity that laid before him. The first-class decks were filled with very rich people that wanted to give their money to him. The only problem is they didn't know it. So he devised a plan where he would spend a week on a ship crossing the Atlantic, swindling as many of the rich passengers as possible, then dock, and do it all over again on a different ship with new passengers. Victor enjoyed the easy money for a few years until World War I hit, putting an end to pleasure cruises between America and Europe. With the war stopping his cruise ship scheme, Victor had to devise another plan. This time, he arrived in New York City dressed to impress in a custom-tailored suit, a silk shirt, and the camel hair topcoat. What con was he pulling this time? He posed as a wealthy aristocrat in political exile. Chapter 2, Magic Money. The 1920s, known as the Roaring Twenties, was the perfect time for a man like Victor Lustig. This period was marked by significant economic growth, and everyone was eager to get a piece of the prosperity. Victor was more than happy to make them believe he could help them achieve that. One of his many con jobs involved counterfeiting, making fake whiskey labels and government stamps for bootleggers. It was during this time that he came up with one of his greatest ideas yet: a money machine that printed duplicate $100 bills. Victor had a beautiful box made, about 2 feet in length, with brass trim and several dials. It looked very sophisticated. He then took this box around, telling people that all they had to do was put a real $100 bill inside, along with a blank piece of currency paper. Not just any paper, but currency paper. After placing the bill and the paper in the box, turning the crank and waiting at least 6 hours, the machine would print an exact replica of the $100 bill. Now they would have 2 $100 bills. Victor named this device the Magic Money Machine. How did this con work? First, Victor obtained a bunch of brand new $100 bills from the bank. Using his counterfeiting experience, he changed the last number of the serial number on all the bills to be the same. Next, Victor was very careful not to ask his victims to buy the box directly. Instead, he gained their trust and made them want to buy it. For example, one of his targets was a wealthy gambler. Lustig would pick his pocket, then return the wallet, saying, "Here, you dropped this." This act made the man feel that Victor was trustworthy, allowing Victor to strike up a conversation with him. During the conversation, Lustig would casually mention the magic box and its capabilities, but act as if he didn't want to discuss it. If the victim brought it up again and showed interest, Victor knew he had a chance. He wasn't done with the charades yet. Once the victim asked more about the machine, Victor acted reluctant to talk more about it, but eventually gave in and invited them to his hotel room for a demonstration. Once in the room, Victor would insert a $100 bill into the machine. Remember, he was using his money from the bank. He would explain the 6-hour wait, which gave them time to bond. After returning to the machine, it would contain both bills. Of course, Victor had hidden the second note in the machine beforehand. The target would then take the money to a bank to verify its authenticity, and the bank teller would confirm that it was indeed real. This verification was usually enough to convince the victim that the box was genuine. The con wasn't over yet, though. Throughout the 6 hours, Victor dropped hints about how he had an emergency situation that required a large sum of money quickly, expressed frustration that the machine took 6 hours for each bill. This is where the victim would suggest buying the machine from him. They believed it was a good investment because they could quickly recoup their money by printing more bills with the machine. Using this strategy, Victor sold multiple copies of the Magic Money Machine across the country for tens of thousands of dollars each. People likely tried the box immediately, but believing it took 6 hours to print a bill gave Victor plenty of time to flee the area before they realized they had been scammed. One woman who didn't take kindly to being scammed spent weeks hunting Victor down. Her name was Billy Mae Scheibel. Once she tracked him down in a hotel room in another city, instead of being angry, she admired his resourcefulness and suggested they become partners in crime. They also became lovers, and Victor ended up leaving his wife for Billy. This decision would come back to haunt him later. Chapter 3: Eiffel Tower for sale, twice. The Eiffel Tower wasn't always considered a national landmark. It was initially intended to be a temporary structure built for the 1889 World's Fair in Paris, scheduled to be demolished 20 years later. However, when the 20 years were up, the people of France had grown accustomed to the tower and decided to keep it. By 1925, the Eiffel Tower was in disrepair, and discussions about tearing it down resurfaced. Reading about this in the newspaper gave Victor another great idea. He was going to sell the Eiffel Tower. Accompanied by a sidekick named Dapper Dan Collins, Victor landed in Paris later that month and wasted no time getting to work. Using his contacts in the criminal world, he obtained forged stationery and credentials from the French Ministry of Posts and Telegraphs, which was responsible for the Eiffel Tower. He then booked a room at a luxury hotel in Paris, posing as a government official. Once settled in, he delivered 6 letters to the largest scrap dealers in Paris, inviting them to the hotel to discuss a private matter too sensitive to be discussed in public. When the men arrived, Victor gave a carefully rehearsed speech about how the government intended to demolish the Eiffel Tower, but didn't want to announce it publicly for fear of an outcry. That's why they were having this secret meeting. They were the selected few who could bid for the salvage rights. Victor came prepared, knowing every detail and measurement, even the number of rivets in the tower. Impressively, he delivered the entire presentation in fluent French. At the end, he told the men they were bidding on 7,000 tons of high-grade iron. All 6 men didn't hesitate to place their bids. Victor wasn't looking for the highest bidder. He had already picked his target. André Poisson, unlike the other 5, was desperate to land a major deal that would put his company on the map. When everyone was leaving, Victor asked Poisson to stay back to discuss something privately. Once alone, Victor gave him a sad story about how a government job didn't pay enough money and subtly hinted that he was looking for a bribe. This story worked, making Poisson feel at ease. Believing the bribe was the cherry on top, Poisson had no problem writing a very generous check for the so-called corrupt mid-level government official. Once the scrap dealer left, Victor rushed to the bank, cashed the check, and caught the next train to Austria. He spent the next few weeks in a luxury hotel in Vienna, waiting to read about his perfect scam in the newspaper. However, the article was never published. It turned out that André kept the whole matter quiet, out of shame and embarrassment for falling for the scheme. Armed with this information, Victor thought, why not do it again? And that is exactly what he did. After taking a few months' break to let things cool down, Victor returned to Paris and repeated the entire con with a new group of people. Just like last time, he walked away with a substantial check. The only problem this time was that the target was not too embarrassed to go to the police. Realizing the heat was on him again, Victor decided to head back to the United States. Chapter 4. All good things must come to an end. After selling the Eiffel Tower for the second time and becoming a rich man, a dream he had since childhood, one might think Victor would slow down and live happily ever after. But that wasn't the case. Victor never intended to slow down, and once back in America, he was on the prowl for his next victim. You might wonder, after selling the Eiffel Tower, what else was there to do? At this point in his career, it wasn't about the money anymore. It was the thrill. It was who he was. No con was too small or too dangerous for Victor. He even conned the notorious mobster Al Capone. Victor approached Capone and told him he needed $50,000 for a scam he was working on, promising to double the money in 2 months. However, he wasn't working on any scam. After 2 months, he returned the money to Al, saying the scam had fallen through. Impressed by Victor's honesty, Al handed him $5,000 as a reward, which had been Victor's plan all along. When the Great Depression hit, Victor found it hard to find people with a lot of money to scam. With fewer available victims, Lustig turned back to counterfeiting. He partnered with a pharmacist named William Watts, who was also a high-class engraver. Unlike most counterfeiters, who stuck to low denominations because they were easier to pass around, Victor and William believed their skills would keep them from being caught, even with higher denominations. This overconfidence would be his downfall. In 1931, Victor conned a Texas sheriff with the magic money box. When the sheriff realized he had been scammed, he tracked Lustig down to Chicago and confronted him at gunpoint. Victor claimed the box must have been defective and that there was no ill will intended. To make things right, he gave the sheriff $50,000, double what the sheriff had paid. The sheriff left, happy to be made whole and then some, but soon found out he had been conned again when he was arrested for trying to pass counterfeit money. This act caught the attention of the Secret Service. While today the Secret Service is known for protecting the president, at that time, their primary job was to stop counterfeiters. Hearing about the high-quality fake $100 bills, they knew they were dealing with a big operation, but not its full scale. Over a few years, Victor and William were able to make and distribute over $1 million in counterfeit money. There were concerns that such an operation could destroy confidence in the dollar and cripple the American economy. In 1934, with Lustig being a top priority, A special squad was assembled to catch him. The squad consisted of Secret Service agents, Treasury Department agents, New York police, and state troopers. In 1935, an anonymous tip led to Victor's arrest. The tipster provided authorities with the address of Victor's counterfeiting headquarters. Listening in on the phones, the police intercepted a call indicating that Victor would be there. When Victor arrived, the special squad stormed the building and took him into custody. Nobody knows who the mystery caller was, but it is believed to have been Billy May. After being dumped by Victor for another woman, she decided to get her revenge by turning him in. Victor, not going down without a fight, had another trick up his sleeve. While in the federal detention center in Manhattan awaiting trial, he made a 50-foot rope using bed sheets and cut through the bars with a pair of pliers that someone had smuggled in for him. As he made his way down the side of the building, he acted like he was cleaning the windows to avoid suspicion. Victor even left a letter for the guards, taunting them about his escape. Unfortunately for Victor, it didn't take long for them to find him again. Less than a month later, he was back behind bars. He was sentenced to 20 years on Alcatraz, where there would be no escaping this time. By this point, he wasn't using the name Victor Lustig. He was using Robert Miller. Victor, or Robert, spent the rest of his life in prison. He complained to the guards that he was sick, but they either didn't believe him or didn't care. Either way, Victor died of pneumonia on March 11, 1947, at the age of 57. Victor Lustig isn't the only one to swindle his way to the top. John D. Rockefeller used dirty tactics to squeeze out his competition on his way to becoming one of the richest men in America. If you want to know more, check out this video here.